Dear Mr. President, dear Shika, dear friends and colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, as an educationalist and psychologist, I take the liberty of making some pedagogical and psychological remarks on the Congress topic, peace and progress instead of wars and poverty. I am sure that we all agree on the Congress theme chosen by the Congress leadership. We are against war. War is an ancient evil of humanity, the greatest scourge of mankind. War does not correspond to the nature of the man. We are also against domination and poverty. The ideology of power, this terrible error of the human race, poisons the atmosphere of our culture and the all-round infection by the bacillus of greed for power leads again and again to epidemic excesses such as war and terror, which drag millions of people along like a plague of the Middle Age. But we are for global peace and progress. But how can humanity achieve this high ethical and moral goal? The founding states of UNESCO, the specialized agency of the United Nations, drew the following lessons from the experiences of the Second World War. A peace based exclusively on political and economic agreements between governments cannot find an unanimous, lasting and sincere consent of the peoples of the world. Peace must, if it is not to fail, be anchored in the spiritual and moral solidarity of humanity. Further, from the preamble of the UNESCO Constitution, since wars arise in the minds of men, peace must also be anchored in the minds of men. In my opinion, that means global peace and progress must be anchored in the thoughts and moral principles of human action and in solidarity, in a sense of togetherness, in fraternity, in a sense of community. Cultural development consists essentially in the voice of the human consciousness and becoming more and more heard, and the spirit of responsibility taking the place of violence. For Alfred Adler, the founder of individual psychology, the deepest idea of all culture is the final rejection of the quest for power and the final elevation of common sense to the guiding idea. He said it 100 years ago. Since politics is prepared in people's mind and hearts, and people act tomorrow in the way they think today, it is above all a question of enlightenment. The purpose of enlightenment efforts is to purify human consciousness from individual and collective prejudices. But even more important than the enlightenment is the problem of education. Deep psychological insight has made education clear to us in its immense scope. Today we know that man is such an extent the product of an upbringing that we can hope to be able to educate people who will be immune to the entanglement of power madness through better, it means psychological methods of upbringing. Thus, education at home and at school must renounce the authoritarian principle which for centuries was regarded to the unquestionable valid basis of educational behavior and the use of violence. The dismantling of greed for power and the striving for violence is therefore not a postulate of the moral preachers. It is a simple necessity of community life. Our task for the future seems to be above all to cultivate and strengthen feelings of community. No means must be too small for us, no effort too laborious to better integrate man into the social structure, to teach him that violence and greed for power can only lead to disaster. I hope that the Congress in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, will send a message of peace to the world that unites peoples. Thank you.